What's up, my podcast listeners and my YouTube subscribers, viewers, everyone who follows my work? What's up? Thank you for listening and watching again. I'm excited about this episode because we are going to go over everything that I do for someone that has shoulder issues from an exercise standpoint. I find that the shoulder joint itself is one of those things that tends to flare up a lot, especially now. And, my show is called Cut the Shit, Get Fit, but you can't get fit unless you're pain-free. And this is what I've been saying a lot in my show. Most recently, probably the last 6 months, I've been really hammering out rehab stuff, because if you think about it, in a year that you're going to the gym and you want to get healthy, lose fat, gain muscle, whatever it is, you can only do that with, consistency throughout the year. But if you flare up your low back, if your shoulder hurts, if your knee hurts, you take a few days off of the gym and then you come back, but you don't go at the same intensity, and then you don't burn as many calories, you get discouraged. Maybe, a week off of the gym turns into a month, maybe that month turns into 2 months, and then you got to go right back into it. Your injury starts flaring up again, and it's this vicious cycle. So in my head, I'm like, rehab stuff and training specifically around an injury goes hand in hand with this whole fat loss, weight loss continuum, if you want to think about it that way. So that being said, I've always kind of educated my personal clients, my online clients, that, if your shoulder doesn't act like a shoulder, then it won't be able to do shoulder things, right? An overhead press is an awesome exercise, but if your shoulder joint doesn't work like it's supposed to, then how the hell are you supposed to do this without any kind of compensation, right? So this is kind of the direction this podcast is going to go into, is a little bit more about anatomy, how our body works, and how that translates to the overall goal of weight loss. Because I've seen it so many times, and this is a whole nother topic, but someone who's obese, someone has 100 pounds to lose, right? They probably have a lot more stress on their joints, and now they're expected, or in their mind, they're like, I really want to get my health in order because my days are numbered if I'm that heavy, because of the medication I'm taking, my blood pressure, all those other things. And now they're going to go into a more stressful environment on their joints, along with the extra added weight on it. It's a recipe for disaster. So this stuff is super, super important. So let's get into it. The big thing that people need to understand is that the shoulder joint consists, I would categorize it in 3 parts. So you have your glenohumeral joint, the ball and socket joint. Then you have your scapula, and then I would also categorize your collarbone, this stuff that connects all to it. Those are 3 parts that allows your shoulder to do all these awesome things for movement. And when those 3 things don't move, or are stuck, or have had an injury, it prevents the whole shoulder joint to kind of work as this one beautiful symphony thing, and things hurt. I would probably start off by saying that primarily what we see, at least in my experience, in my clinical experience, and in the gym, a lot of people get anterior shoulder pain, right in the frickin' front. And that's due to a couple things. The most major one, and the easiest one to kind of categorize, is our posture. Especially now, the amount of Zoom calls I do every week that makes me sit in front of my laptop fucking sucks. I'm like this all day. And when I get chiropractic treatment, fuck, things pop, crack, snap, like it's crazy. And I move daily, right? So I can only imagine how a regular person feels when they're in front of their computer like 12 hours every single day, Monday to Friday. And then Saturday, Sunday, they're just like, fuck, I don't want to do anything, right? So that being said, our posture, if you look from the side view, if we're here, we tend to be here all day. Then people get tight and then they go into the gym like this and they try to do stuff, right? And I've made a podcast about the anatomy of the shoulder, kind of when I first started doing these longer videos. So like go back to like episode, I want to say 370 something, about, I think I was talking about like shoulder cars and how the glenohumeral joint works, right? So with that being said, if we have this prolonged posture, our nervous system kind of takes over and puts us into that position because it understands that, oh, you've always been in this rounded, hunched position, so I'm going to make you more efficient in that so you don't have to create or consume, but produce energy to get you there. So I'm going to keep you there to make it more efficient. But when it comes to movement, our shoulder joint does not like being like this, like being this in this big rounded position. It likes to be centered. It likes to be here, if you think about it. And that allows you to do stuff overhead and out to the side and back behind and do this kind of stuff without any kind of compensation. Like, look at the rest of my body when I do this. Like, there's no movement. This is purely glenohumeral axial rotation. Nothing else is compensating because I work on my shoulder mobility every single day. So when people come to my clinic, to the gym, online, because they've seen my work through Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, the majority of them will have anterior shoulder pain. And there's lots of different ways to attack this. And I want to share kind of like my thought process, what I get the person working towards, and I'm going to kind of give you the guidelines of what you should be doing in your own program, what you should be avoiding, and going from there. So like number one, and this like blows my mind that every time, like I can get like an acute like and chronic shoulder with anterior shoulder pain non-stop year after year, and then I ask the person, what do you do in the gym? They're like, oh, military press, chin-ups, split jerks, overhead snatch, and I'm like, no, please, no. Right? So that's number one. Like, stay away from anything overhead for at least like 2-3 months. Guaranteed. If you just did that one thing, shit is gonna feel a lot better. Because if you think about those three things, glenohumeral joint, your scap, and all this stuff here, your collarbone, if they all work together in unison, then doing this stuff is going to be easy. But if one thing is not moving the way it should, then those other two things are not going to do their job either. So now you're getting sheer force and stress into places that don't belong, and then you got an owie. So that's my first step, is like eliminate the pain factor. Like that's the easiest thing. Like if someone hurt their lower back and they know how they injured it by bending over in a rounded position to go pick up their kid, they're gonna try to not do that again, right? It's like common sense, like, oh, I hurt my back trying to bend over and grab something, I'm not gonna try to do that again. But for some reason, when it comes to the shoulders, it's like, yeah, every time I press, I get sore the next day. All right, I'm gonna go back to the gym and press overhead again. Like, makes no sense to me, right? So, that being said, number one, eliminate all overhead pressing. But if I had someone who was like, I really want to press, like that's all I care about in the gym, you got to meet your patient client halfway. So there's really simple tricks that go a long way. Like I tell this to every patient I work with, like it's a small change that gives you like long lasting dividends for joint health. So for the shoulder, if a person's like, no, I gotta fucking press, like fucking pressing is my thing, I'm like, sure. So say they're a big bench presser. An easy thing to do is just start doing floor presses. Like you can literally do a barbell floor press. You just have to have the rig set up low enough where you can like literally unrack it and then come down to the ground where the elbows touch. So by limiting that range of motion, right, allows you to keep the shoulder joint a little bit more of a neutral position. So if you look at me from the side, say I'm in a bench press position and I'm coming down as past my pecs, like you can already see my sweater's kind of dark, but you'll get what I'm saying. So as I get past a certain point, like as my elbows are past my shoulder, this shoulder pops forward, right? I get to a certain point where this is going to happen if I go all the way low where the barbell touches my chest. That shoulder is going to pop forward. And what is going to bug anterior shoulder pain? Putting it into a more of anterior tilt. Duh, right? So a simple thing is like, okay, well, let's do a floor press. My elbows are going to stop here. How does my shoulder look? Fine, it's not spilling forward like I would if I went down to my chest with the barbell. But those people that are pressing tend to look like this. Say the average gym goer who's not a gym rat but goes like 2 to 3 times a week, sits at a desk all day, they're gonna look like this, most likely, right? Shoulders forward. Now, with that shoulder forward position and I'm trying to do bench press, look how faster my shoulder pops forward. And then if I'm going all the way down, like this doesn't feel good on me, right? That is going to trigger more shit. So it's just finding that depth. Sometimes like I'll tell, like I've worked with powerlifters who've had anterior shoulder pain. We have a lot of work to do, but they have to practice their bench press. It's like, let's do the, okay, I'm losing my thought process of what is it called? You put like the 2x4s or a pad on your chest and you just eliminate your depth. Someone in the comments below tell me what I'm trying to say because I'm totally blanking, but that is one way. And then the other one that I always use is something called a landmine press. So if you take a barbell, a standard 45-pound Olympic barbell, place it into a corner, or if you have a squat rack that has the attachment to slide it in, and now you press on a 45-degree angle, it's not going to hurt the shoulder. 9 out of 10 times, people are surprised that it doesn't bug them. Like I literally have a client that broke their humerus, and I gave them a landmine press. They were worried about it. They did, 12 reps with just the barbell, and they were like, oh, that did not hurt. It's like, yeah, it just puts the shoulder in a better neutral position. And then the fact that I'm pressing single arm, when I get to my end range, my scap now has to stabilize and keep this from falling all over the place, right? So a lot of these exercises are small little tweaks, and you can still train. Like I've literally had people with like a rotator cuff tear, like a grade 2 tear, and they still need to exercise. Like these are the things that help, right? But again, everyone's anatomy is a little bit different. Everyone's issue is a little bit different. So maybe as you're listening to this, watching this, you're like, oh fuck yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym after I watch this. I'm gonna try these 2 things, and they don't fucking work. And you're like, oh fuck you, Raph. Like you don't know shit. But everyone has a different shoulder, right? And when I get questions like this, like, hey, I have this shoulder thing, and like every time I do this, like, what do you think it is? And I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen your shoulder. I can't give you an answer, right? These are general things that I've done. I've literally had people come see me, and I'm like, it's going to be this, and we're going to be good. And it's not even close. And I'm like, fuck, I really got to think about what I'm going to do next. But anyway, those 2 things. If you're like an avid presser, I don't know if that's a good term, an avid bench presser, like you need to do that shit. And the other thing too is like, people know that pulling is a good thing for your shoulders. People understand that, at least people that have like taken the time to read blogs, watch videos like this, they understand that your push-pull ratio should be like a 2 to 1 at least. And for those who don't understand, what I'm saying is that every time you do a pressing exercise, you should be doing a pulling exercise to counterbalance all the tension and stress you're placing on the musculature that allows you to do this. All right, so things like TRX rows, band pull aparts, face pulls, dumbbell rows, cable row, like any rowing motion is going to help your shoulder. The more you can pull, the more your shoulder is going to fall into a more neutral position and it's going to stay there, right? I don't know how long it takes. Fuck, I have no clue. But guaranteed, if you, like I said earlier, eliminate all pressing overhead and any exercise overhead for 3 months, and then added a shit ton of pulling, like whatever a client is doing right now, or you listening right now with shoulder pain, you eliminate like 80% of your pressing and just put in pulling, guaranteed in 3 months, like you'll be like, oh my God, my shoulder is fixed. Guaranteed. But a lot of people don't go down that path and take the time to do that. So those two things already, right? Now, I think this is going to be a two-parter maybe, but those are the exercises that you should be doing. Another thing that people tend to forget, when I say no overhead pressing or overhead exercises, they'll still do like close grip pull down, lat pull down, fucking chin ups. That's still putting the shoulder in a place that should not be there if you have anterior shoulder pain. Because most of the time those people have overhead mobility like this, and now they're going to grab a bar up top to do a chin up, and this is what's going to look like. You're like feeding the dumpster fire of a shitty shoulder, right? So those are the things that people tend to forget. So now we have like 3 strategies. We're eliminating overhead pressing, we're adding a lot more rowing exercises, and the third one is we're also eliminating any exercise overhead that you don't think of, like close grip pull down, lat pull down. Even though those are pulling exercises, your shoulder still has to go above your head and things can fall apart at that point. So now we have 3 strategies. 4th strategy is to actually get more mobility and stability in that shoulder. So the 2 mobility exercises that I do with fucking everyone, like everyone and their mom should be doing these 2 exercises. Number 1, shoulder cars. If your shoulder cannot do this without any kind of compensation, like if you look at my body, like this is purely just my glenohumeral joint in conjunction with my scapula, in conjunction with my collarbone, working all harmoniously to produce that motion. Every patient, every client that I've worked with, where I give them shoulder cars, it does not look like that. And it should. And it takes time. The compensations that I usually see is as people come up top, their elbow breaks, their wrist does a weird thing, and then as they try to go into abduction, the trap pops up, and then they don't really know how to actually rotate, go into internal rotation, and they lean away from the tightness and the pain, and then they kind of do this weird thing. Like, if I see that all the time, and I'm like, well, no shit that when you take a dumbbell and try to press it overhead, if your shoulder can't do its like bare essentials in space and time, you have no business in pressing overhead, or maybe even pressing in general, depending on how bad that shoulder is, right? So when I get someone doing shoulder cars every fucking day, and it's so funny because when patients will ask me, how often should I do these rehab exercises? I'm like, a fucking 100 times a day. And they think I'm serious, and like the joke is like, well, I used to say 1 time a day, but people never ended up doing it. So if I tell them like 100, they're like, oh shit, I need to do this a lot. So honestly, the more the better, right? Like your joints feed off movement. The more you move, like motion is lotion. Like I love that saying, because every time you move that shoulder joint, I'm adding synovial fluid and all these different nutrients and blood flow to the area to help support and build the integrity of the joint. So now we're building that good foundation. So like every freaking day, as much as possible, you want to do shoulder cars. Now, if you don't know what the hell shoulder cars is, go on my YouTube channel and just type in shoulder cars, and I have so many different variations that you can choose from. Number 2, scapular cars. People have no idea how to move their shoulder blades interdependently from everything else, not everyone else. So I like you can do them standing, but I feel like in a quadruped position, so imagine yourself on your hands and knees, so don't worry about my lower body, but my hands are on the ground, and like one scapular push-ups, right? Retraction, protraction, retraction, protraction. Pretty simple. But even then, I've seen people not able to like retract because they end up like arching their lower back and they think they're doing like cat-cow from yoga, but that doesn't really do anything. So the compensation is happening at their lumbar spine, like a lot of things do, to make up for range of motion in your shoulder blade. And then I also see people bending at the elbows and their wrists hurt, and I'm like, fuck, we have a lot of work to do. And then on top of that, I'm like, okay, after we've done our retraction, protraction with our shoulder blades, now we're gonna go into scapular circles in one direction and then the other direction. 99% of the time when I get a person to do that, they can't. The brain doesn't even know how to comprehend that movement pattern. And I'm like, if your shoulder blade can't move freely when asked to, how is it supposed to move when you're placing a dumbbell over your head? It's not. If that shoulder blade behind you doesn't do these things, right, it won't move, then how's this glenohumeral joint supposed to communicate with that shoulder blade to produce a movement? It won't do it so well. It's going to compensate, and that's where a lot of people get pain. So those two mobility exercises, if I can get a shoulder moving the way it should, shit fixes itself really fast. And then imagine if I was doing those two exercises every single day, multiple times a day, eliminated overhead pressing, adjusted my pressing with the landmine and a floor press, and then on top of that, eliminated any kind of pulling exercise overhead, and then also on top of that, did a lot more rowing, face pulls, and all that kind of sweet stuff to get that shoulder moving and grooving. Like, your shoulder's fixed. Like, I've literally had patients and clients go to a physio, get a bunch of treatment done, but they don't add that next step of exercise, and they just like rely on getting needled, manual therapy and things like that, but they don't make true change. They come to me and then we start working together for 3 months and they're like, shoulder doesn't hurt. I'm like, who would have thought that doing specific exercises based on your anatomy would be a good thing? Shit, right? And now, 2 more things that I want to throw in, or maybe 2 more exercises, I don't know yet. Stability. Our shoulder blade needs to be mobile to be able to move, but in order to produce those movements, it needs to be stable. So a lot of times I think a lot of people forget that the shoulder blade needs to be able to learn how to stabilize. And I'm not talking, I'm going to grab a TheraBand and do this, and then do this. Like, that's not going to teach my shoulder blade effectively how to stabilize. And I fucking hate seeing rehab programs with that exercise specifically, because it just showcases how far back trainers, kinesiologists are working from. Like, anyway, this is where kettlebells work amazingly. So I, like, regardless if someone has shoulder pain or not, I have everyone doing farmer carries. So if I had 2 kettlebells in my hand and I placed them by my side and they were heavy enough that if I fell into this position, it would not feel good. So what's my natural response is to be upright in a more centrated position. And if you remember from my previous episodes, that joint centration is safety. Stability is safety for the joint. When I do heavy carries for somebody in their program, their shoulder sets itself. It will stabilize, and I'm also working my rotator cuff muscle specifically to stabilize that shoulder joint. And what does this position look like? A hell of a lot better position than being here all day. So it's like a postural self-correcting exercise where you actually can place heavy weight on a injured shoulder, and a person's going to go like, oh shit, I didn't think that this was not going to hurt. Because I've had patients like that where I can see it in their eye. Like, I will hand them a 10-kilo kettlebell, and they're like, oh, I don't know, that's too heavy. And I'm like, fucking squeeze that handle, break that thing, and walk for me. And then they're like, oh, like, it doesn't feel that heavy at all. I'm like, no, because you're putting your shoulder in a better position, right? So, any kind of carry variation is going to do wonders for the shoulder. And again, if you don't know what carries are, again, go on my YouTube page. I have so many fucking like videos on what's it called? Kettlebell farmer carries, bottoms up carries, waiter carries, rack carries, everything. Carries are going to do justice for that shoulder. Now the last things, like I wanted to do a 30-minute episode, but we're already at almost 26 minutes. But kettlebell armbar and Turkish get up. I'm gonna throw those two in. But if I wanted to have like a complete like stability based shoulder program, then a farmer carry is going to, not a farmer carry, sorry, an armbar, kettlebell armbar is going to do a lot of good stuff. And it also places that shoulder in a neutral position, a centrated position. You're working all those small little intricate muscles that support the shoulder to learn how to stabilize in this position, right? So kind of, I'm going to try to wrap all this up. So if I took someone with acute and chronic shoulder pain, and I eliminated overhead pressing, eliminated any overhead exercise, gave them a shit ton of pulling exercises that are horizontal, not vertical, did some pressing with the landmine and a floor press, did a shit ton of shoulder cars and scapular cars, and then did stability exercises for the shoulder specifically, like any kind of carry variation and the kettlebell armbar, guaranteed in 3 months. Like, you can hold me accountable to it, but you need to be consistent on doing all those 6 things. I can't remember how many I put up with my hands. Guaranteed shoulder pain would go away. Guaranteed, from an exercise and movement standpoint. Again, you could have an underlying issue that I have no clue about, and you have some weird, like, diagnosed shoulder condition that no one even understands yet. But for the most part, I would say like 80% of people that I've seen, that I've worked with, that I've seen in the clinic, in the gym, and online, all those recommendations, sorry, I keep moving my hair like it's in my eye. There's like one strand. Guaranteed things are going to move and feel better. The biggest challenge is doing the work. And that goes for everything, right? Everything that's worth it in life is going to take time. It's going to take hard work, right? But if you put in the work, like, even if you did the minimum of like doing all the stuff that I said, like 2 days a week, because those are the 2 days you work out, you still are going to feel better, right? Adding more fuel to the fire of doing all the stuff opposite of what I just brought is just going to give you more of a headache, and just, it's going to make things worse, right? I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna try to keep it simple, because like I could have gone in so many different directions of this episode on the shoulder. Maybe I can do almost like a presentation style shoulder anatomy episode one of these days. But if you have any questions about your shoulder, your injury, what you should be doing in your program, like, feel free to reach out. Like, hit the show notes, add me on Facebook, add me on Instagram, and like DM me, because I will answer you back. And again, thank you for listening or watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, hit the subscribe button, because I post new stuff all the time. If you're listening, again, go on my YouTube page and subscribe. Like, thank you guys for actually listening, because like almost every week I get a couple more people subscribing, so you guys are listening. Thank you so much. Also, if you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, wherever you're listening to, like, leave me a 5-star review, so then I can get my podcast in higher search rankings, so then we can spread this good information of fitness and health to other people, because there's a lot of people out there that, find my podcast and they're like, holy shit, like I have so much to catch up on, and I'm like, we need to keep doing that. So thank you guys. Spread the message, spread the love. I'm going to continue giving you the best fitness and health advice out there. Until next time, you guys, we'll see you around.